Undercover owner watched a black waitress stay calm in a robbery. His next move shocked the world. Marcus Chin had built his restaurant empire from nothing. 23 years ago, he'd started with a single food truck parked outside construction sites, serving homemade sandwiches to workers who barely had time to eat. Now, he owned 12 restaurants across the city, each one a testament to his relentless work ethic and keen eye for detail. But success had brought unexpected challenges. The neighborhoods where some of his restaurants operated had changed over the years. Crime rates had climbed, and 3 of his locations had experienced real robberies in the past 18 months. The most recent incident at his downtown location had left 2 employees hospitalized and traumatized, unable to return to work. That's when Marcus began his secret surveillance routine. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, he would slip into one of his restaurants unrecognized. A baseball cap pulled low, reading glasses he didn't need, and clothes that screamed middle management office worker instead of successful business owner. He'd order the daily special, sit in a corner booth, and watch. His Riverside location had become his primary concern. Situated in a neighborhood where sirens wailed nightly and security cameras captured more than they should, it operated in the heart of what locals called the danger zone. Yet somehow, this restaurant consistently outperformed his safer locations. The staff worked with a unity he rarely saw elsewhere, and customer satisfaction scores remained mysteriously high despite the challenging environment. Tonight marked his 15th undercover visit to Riverside. As he pushed through the familiar glass doors at 7:30 p.m., peak dinner rush, the usual chaos greeted him. Families crowded around tables, children's laughter mixed with adult conversations, and the kitchen staff called out orders in their rhythmic dance of organized mayhem. But Marcus wasn't watching the customers or even checking if his managers were following protocol. His attention had become fixated on one employee who seemed to operate on a different wavelength than everyone else. Keisha Washington had worked at his Riverside location for 8 months. Her employment file was unremarkable: single mother of 2, previous experience at a competing chain, solid references. But what Marcus observed during his secret visits painted a picture that no resume could capture. She moved through the restaurant like she was conducting an orchestra. When tensions flared between kitchen staff, she appeared with a calming word or a well-timed joke. When difficult customers became aggressive, she had an uncanny ability to defuse situations without calling for management backup. She remembered regular customers' names, their usual orders, and somehow always knew exactly what each table needed before they asked. More importantly, she noticed things. Marcus had watched her quietly redirect drunk customers away from families with small children. He'd seen her slip extra bread rolls to an elderly man who clearly couldn't afford a full meal. She had eyes in the back of her head and instincts that couldn't be taught. But Marcus needed to know more than just her people skills. In his line of business, especially in this neighborhood, the real test wasn't how well someone could serve food during peaceful times. The real test was how they performed when everything went wrong. The idea had been brewing in his mind for weeks. It was unconventional, possibly controversial, but Marcus had built his empire by making bold decisions when others hesitated. He needed to know which of his employees could truly be trusted when crisis struck. Not just trusted to follow basic safety protocols, but trusted to lead, to think clearly, to protect others when fear threatened to consume everyone. 3 weeks of careful planning followed. Marcus contacted a company that specialized in corporate security training, the kind that used realistic scenarios to test employee responses. He explained his unique request, signed confidentiality agreements, and paid a premium for absolute discretion. The actors were professionals. Former law enforcement officers who now worked in private security, trained to create authentic crisis scenarios without causing real harm. They studied the restaurant's layout, understood the neighborhood's criminal patterns, and developed a script that would feel genuinely threatening while remaining completely safe. Marcus had wrestled with the ethics of his plan. He'd lost sleep wondering if he was crossing a line, if there were better ways to evaluate his staff's crisis management abilities. But every time he reconsidered, he thought about the 2 employees recovering from the downtown robbery. He thought about the families who trusted his restaurants to be safe spaces. He thought about the responsibility that came with employing 67 people across his locations, people who depended on him to create secure work environments. The test would happen tonight. As Marcus settled into his usual corner booth, his phone buzzed with a text from the security company. Team in position. Awaiting your signal. He looked around the dining room one final time. 17 customers spread across 12 tables. 5 staff members on duty, 2 servers, 2 kitchen staff, and 1 manager. Normal Tuesday evening numbers. Keisha was serving a family of 4 near the window, parents with 2 young children who couldn't decide between chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. She crouched down to the little girl's eye level, listened patiently to a story about a lost stuffed animal, then somehow convinced both children that they could share both dishes. This was it. This was the moment that would reveal who his employees really were when stripped of routine and comfort. Marcus typed a single word into his phone. Go. The next few minutes would change everything, not just for his business, but for the woman who had no idea she was about to become the center of a story that would reach far beyond the walls of a single restaurant in a dangerous neighborhood. Marcus pocketed his phone and waited. In exactly 90 seconds, 2 masked figures would burst through those doors, and he would finally learn what Keisha Washington was truly made of. The restaurant's cheerful atmosphere shattered in an instant. 2 men in dark hoodies and ski masks exploded through the front entrance, the glass door slamming so hard against the wall that it cracked. The taller one brandished what looked like a silver handgun, while his partner gripped a knife that caught the overhead lights menacingly. Nobody move! This is a robbery! The gunman shouted, his voice rough and commanding. Everyone on the ground now! The transformation was immediate and terrifying. The family near the window, the same one Keisha had been serving moments earlier, screamed in unison. The mother grabbed her children and pulled them under the table, while the father instinctively threw himself over his family like a human shield. An elderly couple by the counter froze mid-bite, forks suspended in air, eyes wide with disbelief. At table 6, a businessman dove behind his chair, his laptop crashing to the floor. The sound of breaking glass mixed with panicked voices as water glasses and plates tumbled from trembling hands. I said everyone down! The second robber yelled, waving his knife toward the customers who hadn't yet complied. Face the floor! Don't look at us! Chaos erupted. A teenage girl at table 3 began hyperventilating, her gasping sobs echoing through the restaurant. Her mother tried to calm her while simultaneously shielding her from the robber's view. Near the kitchen entrance, an off-duty construction worker started to rise, his instincts telling him to fight, but quickly reconsidered when he saw the weapons. The kitchen staff had heard the commotion. Marcus could see them through the service window, 2 cooks pressed against the back wall, terror written across their faces. One was reaching for his phone, probably to call 911, but stopped when the gunman's attention swept in his direction. You! Kitchen people! Out here, hands up! The taller robber commanded. This was exactly the kind of scenario that had played out at Marcus's downtown location 8 months ago, except that had been real. The similarities were haunting and intentional. But while everyone else descended into panic, Keisha Washington remained standing. Not frozen in fear like the others, but standing calmly near table 8, her serving tray still balanced in one hand. She looked directly at the armed men without flinching, her expression serious but not terrified. The gunman noticed her immediately. You deaf? I said get down! I heard you, Keisha replied, her voice steady and clear. But first, let me help get these children safe. It wasn't a request. It wasn't defiance either. It was simply a statement of what needed to happen. Marcus felt his heart hammering as he watched from his corner booth, playing his role as a terrified customer while secretly documenting every moment. This wasn't going according to any script he'd discussed with the security company. Keisha was supposed to comply immediately, like everyone else. Instead, she was moving. With deliberate, non-threatening motions, she approached the family under table 6. The little girl who had been deciding between chicken nuggets was now sobbing uncontrollably, her tiny body shaking with fear. "Sweetheart, we're going to play a game," Keisha whispered, crouching down slowly. "See that counter over there? We're going to crawl behind it like we're hiding in a fort, okay? Can you be really quiet for me?" The knife-wielding robber stepped closer. "Lady, what part of get down don't you understand?" Keisha never broke eye contact with the family. "Sir, I'm just moving these babies to safety. Nobody wants children in the middle of this." She gestured toward the counter area behind the register. "Let me get them situated, then you can have whatever you need from the register." There was something in her tone, respectful but firm, acknowledging the robber's control while asserting her own moral authority, that made both men pause. The gunman looked at his partner, then back at Keisha. "Make it fast. No sudden moves." What happened next would later be described by witnesses as almost supernatural. Keisha became a shepherd in the chaos, guiding the most vulnerable customers to safer positions without ever appearing to challenge the robber's authority. She helped the elderly couple move behind the counter. She whispered calming words to the hyperventilating teenager, while slowly guiding her to a protected spot near the kitchen entrance. She positioned herself strategically so that she remained visible to the robbers, keeping their attention on her rather than on the frightened customers. All the while, she spoke in measured tones that somehow cut through the panic. "Everything's going to be okay. Just stay low and quiet. This will be over soon." The taller robber was growing impatient. "Enough! Where's the manager? Open that register now!" Keisha straightened up, still calm, still composed. The manager stepped out. "I can open it for you. How much do you need?" Marcus couldn't believe what he was witnessing. In 8 months of secret observation, he thought he'd understood Keisha's capabilities. But this was something else entirely. This was leadership under pressure unlike anything he'd ever seen. The restaurant had become a pressure cooker of fear, yet Keisha moved through it like she was navigating a gentle summer breeze. "The register has about $300, she told the gunman matter-of-factly, her hands moving slowly toward the cash drawer. "There's probably another 100 in tips in the back office, but I'd need to get the key from the manager's desk." Her voice carried no tremor, no pleading, no theatrical bravery. She spoke like she was discussing the weather forecast, informative, helpful, completely unruffled. The knife-wielding robber was getting agitated. "Just open the damn thing!" "Of course," Keisha replied smoothly, pressing the keys on the register. "It'll just take a moment to ring through." But as she worked, her eyes never stopped moving. She was conducting a silent symphony of safety, using subtle gestures and meaningful looks to continue organizing the chaos around her. The construction worker near table 5 was still crouched behind his chair, but Marcus could see his muscles tensing, his fists clenching. He was preparing to be a hero, the kind of hero who would get himself and others hurt. Keisha saw it too. "Sir?" she called out softly to the construction worker, never taking her hands off the register. "Could you help me by keeping an eye on the little ones back there? Make sure they stay quiet?" It was brilliant. She'd given him a job, a purpose, a way to feel useful without being dangerous. The man's expression shifted from aggressive determination to protective focus as he turned his attention to the children huddled behind the counter. The register drawer sprang open with a cheerful ding that seemed absurdly out of place in the tense atmosphere. "Here we go," Keisha announced, beginning to count out bills. 10s, 20s, 50s. But as she counted, something unexpected happened. The little girl from the family near the window, the one who had been deciding between chicken nuggets, broke away from her mother's grasp. In her panic and confusion, she ran directly toward the front of the restaurant, sobbing for her daddy. She was heading straight toward the armed robbers. Time seemed to slow. The gunman swung his weapon toward the sound, his finger visible on the trigger. The child's mother screamed. The father lunged forward but was too far away. Keisha didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, she stepped sideways, placing herself directly between the gunman and the running child. She didn't shout, didn't make any sudden movements that might startle the robber into firing. Instead, she simply became a human shield, her arms spread slightly as if she were gently corralling a butterfly. "Sweetheart, come to me," she whispered to the child, her voice somehow carrying over the chaos. "Right here, baby girl. You're safe with me." The little girl, recognizing Keisha's voice from their earlier conversation about chicken nuggets, changed direction and ran straight into Keisha's waiting arms. The gunman's weapon was now pointed directly at Keisha's chest, less than 6 feet away. "Don't you move!" he growled, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. This wasn't going according to whatever plan he'd had. Keisha slowly knelt down, the child in her arms, making herself smaller, less threatening. "I'm not moving anywhere," she said quietly. "I'm just going to sit right here with this little one until you're finished." And that's exactly what she did. While the taller robber grabbed the money from the register and his partner kept watch, Keisha sat cross-legged on the floor near the counter, the little girl curled in her lap. She hummed softly, some melody Marcus didn't recognize, but that seemed to calm not just the child, but somehow the entire room. Other customers began to visibly relax. The teenage girl stopped hyperventilating. The elderly couple's trembling subsided. Even the kitchen staff, still visible through the service window, appeared less panicked. Keisha had become the eye of the storm, a point of absolute calm in the center of chaos. The robbers seemed affected by it too. Their movements became less aggressive, their voices quieter. The knife-wielding man actually lowered his weapon slightly, as if Keisha's composure was contagious. "That's all of it," the gunman announced, stuffing the cash into a backpack. "We're leaving. Nobody follows us. Nobody calls the cops for 10 minutes, or we come back." As they prepared to leave, the taller robber paused, looking directly at Keisha. For a moment, Marcus thought he was going to say something. Instead, he just shook his head slightly, as if he couldn't quite believe what he'd witnessed either. The door slammed behind them, and silence filled the restaurant. But instead of the explosion of panic and tears that Marcus had expected, something else happened. People looked to Keisha. Still sitting on the floor with the little girl, still radiating that inexplicable calm, she had somehow become the person everyone turned to for guidance on what to do next. For 30 seconds, the restaurant remained frozen in an eerie quiet. The only sounds were the little girl's soft sniffles and the distant hum of the kitchen refrigerators. Everyone seemed to be holding their breath, waiting for someone to tell them it was safe to move, safe to speak, safe to feel again. Keisha was the first to break the silence. "Is everyone okay?" she asked gently, her voice carrying to every corner of the restaurant. "Anyone hurt? Anyone need help?" Heads turned toward her from behind tables and counters. The elderly couple slowly emerged from their hiding spot. The construction worker stood up, brushing dust off his knees. The businessman retrieved his laptop from the floor, hands still shaking slightly. "Should we call the police?" the mother of the little girl asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, someone should." Keisha began to respond, but then she stopped mid-sentence. Marcus was standing up. Not the frightened, crouching customer he'd been moments before. He was standing tall, confident, reaching into his jacket pocket. Several people flinched, thinking perhaps the robbery wasn't over after all. Instead, Marcus pulled out his wallet, and more surprisingly, a set of keys that clearly belonged to the restaurant. "Actually," Marcus said, his voice carrying easily through the quiet space, "nobody needs to call the police." Confusion rippled through the room. Keisha's eyebrows furrowed as she looked at this stranger who was suddenly acting like he belonged there. Marcus took a deep breath. After weeks of planning, months of secret observation, and the most intense 15 minutes of his professional life, the moment had arrived. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I need to tell you something that's going to sound impossible. What just happened here wasn't real." The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the quiet of fear or shock. This was the quiet of minds trying to process something that didn't make sense. The construction worker was the first to speak. "What do you mean, wasn't real?" Marcus walked to the center of the dining room, where everyone could see him clearly. "Those men weren't actual robbers. They were actors. Professional security consultants hired to conduct a crisis management test. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. That's impossible, breathed the elderly woman. The guns, the knives, props, Marcus replied. Completely realistic, but fake. The entire scenario was staged. He paused, looking around at the faces staring at him in disbelief. And I'm not just some random customer who knows this. I'm Marcus. I own this restaurant. The explosion of voices was immediate and overwhelming. You've got to be kidding me. Are you insane? This is unbelievable. You can't be serious. The businessman slammed his laptop shut. You traumatized everyone here for what? Some sick experiment? The mother clutching her little girl looked furious. My daughter is going to have nightmares for weeks. How could you do this to children? Marcus raised his hands, trying to calm the storm of angry voices. I understand you're upset. I know this seems cruel. But please let me explain. Explain what? The construction worker interrupted, stepping forward aggressively. How you thought it was okay to terrorize innocent people? To put us all through hell? But Keisha, still sitting on the floor with the little girl in her arms, was staring at Marcus with a different expression entirely. Not anger, not confusion, but something closer to understanding. The timing was too perfect, she said quietly, but her voice somehow cut through all the shouting. The way they knew exactly when to come in, during peak hours when we had just the right number of people. Marcus nodded, grateful that someone was thinking instead of just reacting. I've been coming here for months, observing how the staff handles different situations. But I needed to know how everyone would respond in a real crisis. So you put us all in danger? The teenage girl's mother demanded. No, Marcus said firmly. No one was ever in actual danger. The actors are trained professionals. There were safety protocols in place that you couldn't see. But what I witnessed here tonight... He turned to look directly at Keisha. What I witnessed was something extraordinary. The room gradually quieted as people waited to hear what he would say next. In 8 months of watching this restaurant, I thought I knew what good service looked like. I thought I understood leadership. Marcus's voice grew stronger, more confident. But what Keisha Washington did here tonight, how she protected every single person in this room, how she kept everyone calm, how she literally put herself between danger and a child, that wasn't just good service. That was heroism. Keisha finally stood up, gently passing the little girl back to her parents. Mr. Chin, she said, and Marcus was surprised she knew his name. Why? The question hung in the air, simple yet profound. Marcus looked into Keisha's eyes and saw not anger or confusion, but genuine curiosity. Even after everything that had just happened, she wanted to understand rather than condemn. Because 3 of my restaurants have been robbed in the past 2 years. Marcus began, his voice becoming more personal, less businesslike. Real robberies. 2 of my employees were hospitalized after the downtown incident. One of them, a young man named David, still can't work in restaurants. He has panic attacks every time he hears sudden loud noises. The room had grown quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet now. People were listening instead of just reacting. I realized I had no idea how my staff would handle a real crisis. Training manuals and safety videos can only teach you so much. When real danger strikes, when people's lives are at stake, you discover who someone truly is. He gestured around the room. What I discovered tonight is that I have an employee who is extraordinary in ways I never imagined. Marcus walked closer to Keisha, and for the first time since his reveal, he smiled. Keisha, in 15 minutes, you did something that professional crisis managers train years to achieve. You didn't just follow safety protocols, you rewrote them. You turned chaos into calm. You protected the vulnerable. You made decisions that saved lives, even though you thought those lives were in real danger. The construction worker, who had been one of the angriest voices moments before, stepped forward. She did save us, he admitted grudgingly. If this had been real, if I had tried to play hero like I was planning to, people could have gotten hurt. The elderly woman nodded emphatically. She got us to safety. She never raised her voice, never made things worse. She saved my little girl," the mother added, her anger softening into something closer to gratitude. "When Emma ran toward those men, she could have. But Keisha just stepped in front of her like it was nothing." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed it to the room. "I have a text here from the security company. Do you know what it says?" He looked directly at Keisha. "It says their team leader, a former police officer with 20 years of experience, has never seen anything like what you did tonight. They're asking if you'd be interested in training other people in crisis management." Keisha shook her head slowly. "Mr. Chen, I was just doing what felt right. Anyone would have." "No," Marcus interrupted firmly. "Not anyone. I've been in business for 23 years. I've employed hundreds of people. What you did tonight wasn't just professional excellence. It was moral courage of the highest order." He paused, looking around the room at all the faces watching this exchange. "Which is why I'm making some changes, effective immediately." Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather folder. "Keisha Washington, as of this moment, you are no longer a server at this restaurant. You are the new general manager of the Riverside location." Gasps echoed through the room. Keisha's eyes widened in shock. "The position comes with a salary increase of $30,000 annually, full benefits, and a share in the restaurant's profits." Marcus continued. "But that's not all." He opened the leather folder and pulled out what appeared to be an official document. "I have 2 children, Keisha. I know what it means to want the best for them, to dream about their futures, to worry about how to pay for their education." His voice grew emotional. "Tonight you proved that you would literally put your life on the line to protect other people's children. So I'm establishing the Keisha Washington Educational Fund." The room was completely silent now. "Full college scholarships for both of your children. 4 years each, any accredited university they can get into. Room, board, tuition, books, everything." Keisha's composure finally cracked. Tears began streaming down her face as the magnitude of what Marcus was saying hit her. "Mr. Chen, I can't, this is too much." "No," Marcus said gently. "This is exactly right. This is what happens when someone shows true leadership, true character, true heroism." The construction worker began clapping. Then the elderly couple joined in. Within seconds, the entire restaurant erupted in applause that seemed to shake the walls. Through her tears, Keisha managed to speak. "Thank you. This will change everything for my family." "Everything." Marcus smiled. "That's exactly the point. Heroes should be rewarded, not just recognized." But neither Marcus nor Keisha knew that their story was just beginning. In the back corner of the restaurant, the businessman who had seemed so angry earlier was quietly putting his phone back in his pocket. The video he had just uploaded to social media was already starting to spread. By morning, the world would know Keisha's name. The businessman in the corner booth had a name, David Rodriguez, and 847 followers on his social media account. He thought the video he'd captured might get a few dozen likes from friends who enjoyed heartwarming stories. He was spectacularly wrong. Within 6 hours, his shaky phone footage of the reveal had been shared 12,000 times. By the next morning, major news outlets were calling his phone nonstop. The video had exploded across every platform imaginable, accumulating millions of views and sparking conversations in languages Marcus had never heard spoken. The footage captured everything: Keisha's tears when Marcus announced the scholarships, the thunderous applause from customers, and most powerfully, the moment when the little girl looked up at Keisha and whispered, "Are you an angel?" But the video was just the beginning. News crews descended on the Riverside restaurant like it was a presidential campaign stop. The parking lot filled with satellite trucks and reporters clutching microphones, all wanting to interview the woman the internet had dubbed the guardian angel waitress. Marcus arrived at 6 a.m. to find the chaos. He prepared for local attention, maybe a small story in the city newspaper. Instead, he discovered that Keisha's story had become a global phenomenon overnight. CNN wants an exclusive, his assistant informed him breathlessly. Good Morning America is offering to fly you both to New York. There's a producer from Ellen's show on line 3, and someone from the BBC called twice. But Marcus wasn't thinking about media opportunities. He was worried about Keisha. She arrived for her shift at her usual time, 7 a.m., completely unaware of the circus waiting outside. Marcus watched through the window as she parked her 15-year-old Honda and walked toward the employee entrance, only to be surrounded by a wall of cameras and shouting reporters. Keisha, how does it feel to be a hero? What went through your mind when you protected that child? Do you have a message for working mothers everywhere? Marcus rushed outside to rescue her, pushing through the crowd. Please give her some space. She just learned about this herself. Once inside the safety of the restaurant, Keisha sat down heavily, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. I don't understand, she said, scrolling through her phone in amazement. People are calling me from other countries. My cousin in Atlanta says I'm on the news there. Someone in Japan sent me a message saying I inspired them. The reactions were pouring in from everywhere. The hashtag #GuardianAngelWaitress was trending worldwide. Mothers shared stories of their own struggles and praised Keisha as a role model. Business leaders debated Marcus's testing methods while universally applauding his response to Keisha's performance. But not all the attention was positive. Critics questioned the ethics of Marcus's staged robbery. Psychological torture disguised as a business test. One editorial called it. Labor rights advocates argued that employees shouldn't be subjected to trauma-inducing scenarios without consent. Mental health professionals warned about the potential lasting effects on everyone involved. Marcus found himself defending his methods on national television, but he never wavered in his conviction that the test had revealed something important. Could I have handled it differently? Perhaps, he told a CNN interviewer. But the reality is that businesses in challenging neighborhoods face real threats. My employees deserve to know they were working alongside someone who would protect them when it mattered most. Meanwhile, Keisha's life transformed overnight. Job offers flooded in from across the country. A major hotel chain wanted her to lead their crisis management training. A security consulting firm offered her a position that would triple her current salary. Publishers reached out about book deals. Speaking bureaus wanted to represent her. A documentary filmmaker proposed following her story for a year. But perhaps the most meaningful responses came from unexpected places. The original security consultants who had played the robbers requested a meeting with Keisha. They wanted to understand her techniques and incorporate them into their training programs. A group of teachers from an inner-city school district invited her to speak to their students about leadership and staying calm under pressure. Most surprisingly, police departments from 3 different cities asked if she would consider consulting on de-escalation training for their officers. 3 months later, as Marcus and Keisha appeared together on a national morning show, the host asked the question that everyone wanted answered. Keisha, you've become a symbol of grace under pressure. People around the world look to your example when facing their own challenges. How do you feel about that responsibility? Keisha smiled, the same calm confidence she'd shown that night still evident in her demeanor. I think we all have moments when we can choose to help or to hide, she replied. That night I chose to help. If my story encourages other people to choose helping too, then maybe something good came from something that felt scary. The interviewer turned to Marcus. And you? Any regrets about your unconventional testing method? Marcus looked at Keisha, then back at the camera. My only regret is that it took me 8 months to discover what an remarkable person I had working for me. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are hiding in plain sight, waiting for their moment to shine. The restaurant had become more than just a place to eat. It had become a destination, a symbol of unexpected heroism in everyday places. And Keisha Washington had become exactly what Marcus suspected she always was, a leader worth following, no matter what storms might come.